today. Today we're going to be going over the multi-position air handler. There's a lot of uses for this. We've been doing some talks with some of the sales consultants, and I've been going and doing some other training for some of the in-house guys as well. And the uses that we can, the places and way we'll be able to utilize this air handler in the future, I just see this being more of the norm, especially when you're trying to get somebody into an inverter system, a high efficiency system. So we're gonna definitely get into this. We're gonna take all the panels off. I'm gonna give you as much information as I can today. It's not gonna be talking about the accessories too much, but we're going to, like I said, take it apart. You'll be able to see the inside, go over all the internal parts, and then we'll probably talk about some applications as well, because one of the there are some key differences in the multi-position air handler when it comes to installation versus a standard split style system. I will be going over some of the basic accessories that you can use, because this is it's basically an air handler. So just about everything you're going to be able to install on this system, you'll be able to install on a multi-position air handler as well. So just, okay, so let's get right into it. With the multi-position air handler, they're available up to a 4-ton in a single zone application. They will be within a few months, I believe towards the end of March, April, this will be able to utilize up to a 24,000 BTU in a multi-zone application. What makes that so great is that you'll be able to zone homes, right? You'll be able to utilize a multi-position air handler, maybe utilizing your existing ductwork. For example, for my house, I have a 4-ton system, and I have the ductwork in there. I have 3 bedrooms all along on the other side of my home. So essentially, I'd be able to use my existing ductwork, shut down the vents in my bedrooms, go with maybe probably a 2-ton to cool the main area of the home. So that provide, be zoning the main area of the home, no problem. On the same condenser, I'd be able to put 3 separate heads for each bedroom. So then I can basically, I just zone my whole house without having to redo my ductwork. So that's going to be a huge benefit, I think, when we start using this in a multi-zone application. So definitely something that we're looking forward to, and something that we probably definitely see more in the future. Now, when it comes to accessories, just about everything here, the iWave R, you'll be able to use the iWave R, installing it. If you look at, once we open this up, you'll see there's a lot of room inside there. So it'll be much easier to install the iWave R. Your UV lights, condensation pumps, basically almost anything that you would put on a standard HVAC mini or split style system, you're going to be able to use in this system as well. One of the other things that I will point out is you will use a conventional style float switch. Inside here, we'll go over a little later. You'll see where those access points are. We're not going to dive too deep into those, because the next webinar, I will actually show you how to wire it in, where the tap's going to be in, and hopefully I'll be able to get this system powered up, and maybe we can even walk through the settings on the advanced controller. So that's going to take a little finagling for me inside my workshop here, but hopefully I'll be able to have that for you, because walking through things, right firsthand, obviously hands-on training is always the best. But anything I can do to get as close as the hands-on training for you guys as possible is what I'm going to do. So if there's any other suggestions you guys have during this talk, as far as something that you'd like to see maybe more clear after I'm done, please send us an email and let us know if there's anything in particular that you guys really want me to focus on, and then I'll make sure to include that in the next talk as well. With this system, you're going to basically use a advanced wire controller. I'm going to put the head cam on a little bit, but I don't want you guys getting too dizzy too early. So I'm just going to kind of walk to the camera and show you guys everything, and then we'll get up close and personal. So the advanced wire controller, what is great about the advanced wire controller is there's a lot of functions and settings when it comes to multi-position air handler that you're going to want to be able to access, and basically you could tailor this system to the home, and that's what's great about this. So with the use of the advanced wire controller, you'll be able to get into those option settings, and you can do things as such as, well, let me start off with this. Even though this looks like a regular air handler, I've been telling people that it's a high wall unit dressed like a regular air handler. The reason why I say that is because Just like a high wall unit, in this unit, it's default set for the fan continuously run. For the most part, that works out good. But as you guys know, once that coil raises in temperature, once it stops dehumidifying the home and providing cooling, there are times, and there have been times, where that moisture, if the fans continuously running, will blow back in the home. So just like with the high walls, you can have the fans so it shuts off on thermal off. Thermal off meaning if it reaches heat, the fan shuts off. If it reaches cool, the fan shuts off. That also applies to our high wall system. So the Samsung systems, if you install the Samsung high wall system or four-way cassette and you want the fan to shut off, that's also a function that you guys can take advantage of on the high wall systems. I've had a couple guys that have asked about that, and we're able to walk them through that as well. But back to the multi-position air handler, one thing that is important to know is, yes, the fan does run continuously. So that's going to be a setting that you're going to want to set. When you install the float switch, you're going to go into the settings and you're going to set the float switch settings. There's a lot of different settings that you can go into the menu, and you can explore different options depending on what the homeowner needs. You can, if you want the fan to run when it has thermal off and you want it to continuously run, you can set that fan speed as well. So like I said, there's a lot of use by using the advanced wire controller. You're going to have if there's an error code, it's going to be readily available. Another benefit is that you can activate the built-in sensor for the advanced wire controller. You have the option to either use the sensor that's in here or use the sensor that's in the unit. So for instance, if there's an area where they don't want to see the controller and you want to put it somewhere else, you can choose whether to sense the temperature at the controller or at the unit, or an average of the two. So that's going to be another function that you're going to want to be. Also, with this, you can also control a fresh air damper. So if you have a motorized fresh air damper, it's in a commercial setting. You can get into the settings, and there are access points on the board where you'll be able to control that fresh air damper. So like I said, there's a wide range of settings that you're going to be able to use, but you really need to use the advanced controller. I will take it out of the bag here real quick and show it to you. It's very clean, very simple, lights up nice. I know you may have some customers that want an Ecobee or something like that, but this is a very sleek, clean looking controller. The way it lights up, you can schedule it. It has program functions where you can schedule and they can have it come on and off. You can purchase separately a Wi-Fi kit. So this can also be controlled in Wi-Fi mode as well. So that's going to be something that maybe have a customer that is really into apps. So they'll be able to download the Samsung SmartThings app, and they'll be able to use this on their app and be able to control it. With the app, if you've seen one of our other classes, the app has several functions. It has your geofencing and all kinds of, just a wealth of information and accessibility. If they have other smart devices in the home, they can just use the one app to control everything. So if you have a customer that is into having apps and controlling everything, then this is a good way to go, but you will have to purchase an additional Wi-Fi kit in order to have that function with this system. Another thing I do want to mention, we're going to go over some installation nuances, right? As I mentioned before, this looks like an regular air handler, but it still needs to be thought of when it comes to installation as a regular high wall mini split. Why is that important? Maybe just ask you guys, what is a typical, where is the expansion valve located on a typical mini split system? Typically it's outside, right? Just like with those, this also, the expansion valve is located outside. And why is that important? Well, there's a couple reasons why that's important. One of the main reasons why it's important is because you're copper. Okay, you don't have the expansion valve in here, so what's going to happen? Well, both copper lines are going to sweat. So both copper lines are going to sweat. Herein lies one of the maybe one of the hurdles if you're going from a conventional style AC system to a multi-position air handler. You're going to have to run. It's going to have its own copper. Not only because the existing copper is not going to be insulated, but also the pipe sizing is going to be different as well. On a 3-ton system, this is only 5/8 and 3/8, and I believe the 3.5-ton system is also 5/8 and 3/8, and then the 4-ton I believe is 3/4. They only come up to a 4-ton, so unfortunately this is not going to be available on a 5-ton. But that being said, piping is something that is, unfortunately, if you're going back behind another conventional style split system, is going to be something you'd have to figure into the price. Now, we had to do that when we went from the R22. If you guys remember, a lot of times way back when we were going high efficiency, the R22 high efficiency systems required that 1.25 inch, 1.125 copper, right? So there's still homes out there that have that 1.125 copper. 410, we've been able to get away with a lot of the homes where they're still on 1.125 copper. But we have found that a lot of guys have had to rerun copper when they were going from the high efficiency R22s to the 410 system to just have the system perform better. So this is not something that hasn't been done before, but it is something you need to be aware of. The line set will need to be insulated separately because both lines are going to sweat, and then there's going to be that you don't want to run them in the same insulation jacket either, because there's not going to be much temperature difference between the evap in and evap out. So you're going to want to make sure that they're insulated separately, but they're insulated well, and that they go all the way back to the condenser. If you notice, unlike a traditional mini split system, we do have sweat fittings, right? This is a sweat in coil. You can see it's capped off and it's sealed from the factory. One thing that kind of, I think, plagues, and I was guilty of this too, is majority of us, we're not low flowing nitrogen, right? I wasn't low flowing nitrogen hardly ever. We did flush, we would flush it out. But in order to alleviate that, because with mini splits, they're a little more temperamental when it comes to that carbon buildup that forms from not low flowing nitrogen. We are selling the Zoom lock fittings. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Zoom lock fittings, but we have the Zoom lock fittings. They're available in 90s straights. They're available in all the different sizes. I would definitely recommend purchasing the removal tool. What's great about that is if you put Zoom lock fittings on here and you need to clean a coil, if you have the removal tool, you don't need to braze at all, right? You can just use the removal tool, pop the Zoom lock fittings off, take the coil out, clean the coil, put it back in, put your Zoom locks in, put your vacuum on, and you're good to go. So with the Zoom lock fittings, so far, I've been hearing great reviews, and I haven't seen anybody have any leaks as long as you do it properly. So there is an installation, and a little installation toolkit, and this helps you. It has a little, what do they call it? The sanding pad, so you're able to clean the copper, and then make sure that your copper is round, nice and round. So when you put the Zoom lock fitting, you get a good seal. That's the only thing that you're really going to want to make sure you pay attention to, or have you guys maybe do a training. Maybe we can set up an in-house training later on how to properly install the Zoom lock fitting, and we'll put some nitro to it. I don't know, maybe that might be something good for the future that we can do. So if that's something that would interest you guys, I think this is going to really benefit a lot of contractors, especially if you have to call in for, like fire watch at a building, where if you have to do some soldering, you might be able to leave that, just by putting some of the Zoom lock fittings in. So Zoom locks, so far, I've been hearing good reviews on. So definitely something, if you're not familiar with and you haven't tried yet, I suggest you do. Just like the other mini split system that Samsung sells and installation, if you guys are already familiar with it, the 16-2 stranded shielded wire. The 16-2 stranded shielded wire is still something they recommend for these systems. Also, running this to the advanced controller is something I recommend as well. I have talked to some of the guys at Samsung, and they said that running, if you have a regular thermostat wire, only to the advanced wire controller, is something they've seen done and have had success with no issues. I look at it as, if you're installing it, just use this. It's not worth having a callback over something because we didn't run the 16-2 stranded shielded wire. So I really recommend that you don't just always run this. We sell it. It's very affordable, and you just buy it, put it in, and that way you don't have to worry about having communication errors later on in the future. Okay, some of the other things that we want to look at here. before I put the head cam on and we start getting deeper into it. If you look down here, this is our standard, this is our Ruud filter rack that we sell for all our Ruud units. So it will fit, as you can see, using this filter rack. And why is that important? Just like anything else, static on an inverter system is very important. So utilizing this, I highly recommend utilizing this filter rack, pulling these rails out. There's rails on each side. If you don't know this already, there are rails on each side. You pull these little rails out, and now you can put a 2-inch filter in there. It takes a 20 by 20 by 2-inch filter. The 4-ton cabinet is about 24 inches wide, 24.5 inches wide. So that's something you want to take into account. It is wider, and I believe it's about 55 inches tall on the 4-ton. This one I believe is 45 or 42 or 44 inches tall. About average, about your average size air handler. But utilizing this 2-inch filter is going to help the performance of your system. It's going to keep your static low. You're going to move the proper amount of air, and then you can get your homeowner. You can get them a dozen filters. I wouldn't say it's a sales pitch, right? But they can come back to you because they can't buy those Home Depot. So this is something that can keep the homeowner, unless you have a problem customer, right? You don't want them to come back to you. But most customers, we want them to come back to us. You get them on 2-inch filters, and we all know the benefits of the airflow. It's going to have more filter media. It's going to filter. It's going to keep the air cleaner in the home, and then they can always come back for more filters during their maintenance. If you do annual maintenance or biannual maintenance, that's something that you guys can also offer your customer. And I recommend these, if you're putting these in and you don't know it already and you're using them, pull those rails out. If you have customers that you've already installed these filter racks on before, you may want to talk to them about going with a 2-inch filter. I went to a job site call the other day, and they had the 1-inch filter on there, and the filter alone gave me a 1/2 inch of static pressure. I took the filter out. It was 0.6 filter out. It was 0.1. They did have some ductwork on the return. So that thin filter that they had, of course, it was one of those crazy 3M filters. It doubled the static pressure on the system. Without the filter, I was at a 0.5, almost doubled. Without the filter, I was at a 0.5 static total. Not on a Samsung. This was on a Ruud system. I was at 0.9. I took the filter out. I was down to 0.5. So by all means, really utilize it. I know some people, it gets really, really close to the ceiling, so you may not have room for that. But if you can use it, if you have the space for it, sorry, go with the 2-inch filter. Otherwise, when we look at this, as we look at this air handler, you're going to have your it's set up for horizontal left. You have your other drain ports, very similar. You have the lower port is your main drain, and the higher port is going to be your auxiliary float switch. That's where that's going to go in. But you do actually, when you take this panel off, you also have options in the drain pan. You don't have to switch the drain pan, but you do have options for a right-hand drain as well. So you can drain on the right hand or drain on the left-hand side. So that's going to come in handy if you're going behind another system. Let me revert back to installing this in a situation where you're going behind, say there's a regular 3-ton Ruud system. This is a 3-ton air handler. So if you're going back behind a standard 3-ton system, one thing you're going to have to rerun the copper. Hopefully you have attic or it's accessible. If it's not, and running the copper is not feasible, but then all means, right, we have Ruud and Allied, so we could take care of you regardless. But getting somebody on one of these systems, especially when you get closer to the beach, like we mentioned before in some of the earlier Samsung talks, that the condensers, they have that salt tested seat coating on the condenser coil. So it's going to be able to resist that salt a lot more than your standard air conditioning system. And it's a slim fit condenser or slim profile condenser. So those homes, especially closer to the city or downtown Fort Lauderdale or by the beach, you have walkways where they have these condensers, and it literally, or some of these bigger homes where they're just packed together, you don't have much space. In my house, my condenser takes up about, I would probably say 60 or 70% of my walkway. So getting through that side of my house is a pain. If I if eventually, hopefully one day I'll go with the slim style condenser, I'm going to gain a ton of space on the side. And one thing I will tell you, and you probably guys already know this, there's nothing quieter than a mini split condenser. The UA systems, they're quiet. A lot of the systems are pretty quiet, but man, there's nothing quieter than these mini split condensers. So they're super quiet, slim profile. If you have a situation where you're going to be coming back and installing that, right, you're going to save the homeowner space. It's going to be quieter, and then you're getting them on a true inverter communicating system that has, like I said, these have been around for the inverter style condensers have been around for a long time for the mini splits. So it's definitely a proven technology. But you're going to have to rerun the copper. You will have to power the air handler from the condenser, and you're going to have to run your communication wire as well. The reason why we power the air handler from the condenser, there's a couple reasons, and will it work? If you don't, yes, it will work. But this is just something that's going to help prevent later nuisance calls that may or may not happen, right? Because I've already seen several jobs where they power this air handler off the same power that they powered the old air handler with. Where you're going to run into issues is that if you have multiple circuits, maybe this would be more commercial, they're supposed to share the same voltage. That being said, if you have, let's just say you have 208 at your condenser, and you're powered from another circuit, maybe it's not on the same bus bar, and you have 208 normally. Maybe on this bus bar there's a walk-in cooler, or there's another big package unit, right? And when that unit comes on, it's going to pull voltage. You're going to drop in voltage. Well, why that's important is because this is going to communicate directly with the condenser. It constantly communicates. It's constant communication. It doesn't only, when you send a signal, it doesn't only communicate when you use the remote. It's just constantly communicating the sensors back to the outdoor sensors, and using those in order to cool the home and tell you, open up the EEV and speed or slow down the compressor, speed up or slow down the compressor. If you get a spike or drop in voltage, what could happen is that voltage that's incoming to this unit is going to impact the DC voltage in the communication. So if you get a rise in voltage, and say this is sitting at 210 or 212, and the outdoor unit is sitting at 208, that DC voltage that's communicating back and forth is not going to be correct. So you could, and you will most likely in that situation, get a communication error code that may disappear when you get there to go look at the job. And that's something I think we're all used to, right? It doesn't do it when you're there, but when you're gone, right, it's there. Unfortunately, we can't sit there and wait around forever, because nobody's going to want to pay us, whatever, $80 to $100 something an hour to just sit there and watch a unit or babysit a unit. So utilizing that or running that line voltage from the condenser is going to ensure that the air handler is going to have the same voltage as the condenser, so you're not going to have the possibility of that nuisance call. Also, not to mention is when you run the ground from the condenser to the air handler, that ground that plays a role in the communication as well. So that's another reason why you really want to just run the line voltage to the condenser, and then you're going to run your control wire to it as well. This system is a heat pump system, and you do not need, nor I don't think you'll have to put in, especially down here in South Florida, the additional heat strip kit. There is an electric heat kit that you can purchase, but you don't have to, because it is a heat pump. And what makes this different than a regular heat pump is you're not going to have to worry about calling for emergency heat. The unit's not going to shut down and go into defrost mode in the middle of heating. These systems, they heat 100% heating capacity down to, I believe this one's down to 14 degrees Fahrenheit outdoor temperature, which we may hit that in some parts of Florida this weekend coming up, but not down here in South Florida. And then the newer versions that are going to be coming out in a few months as they start being released, those are going to be 100% heating capacity down to -4 degrees, I believe. I don't know if Michael's blends in the chat. If he wants to clarify that for me, he can. As for some reason I was saying 22 degrees, and I don't know where I got that number from, but this one on the submittal, -14 degrees, or sorry, 14 degrees, 100% heating capacity. So you're not going to need the additional heat strip kit. If you got an inspector or you do need it, then by all means we can order it, and that's something that can be installed. I'll show you where that's going to go later. But since you don't need to install a heat kit, you're not going to need a lot of voltage. There's just a constant torque motor in here. It's not going to pull more. I'd be surprised for more than 2 amps. So running that 14.3 power wire is all you're going to need to power up the system, and then the 16.2 stranded shielded wire as well. Another thing that we want to talk about is this system is a left-hand. It's set up for a left-hand flow. It can be converted to a right-hand flow. It can also be converted to a downflow. If you are going to install this system in a downflow application, you will need to purchase an additional downflow installation kit, which is going to come with brackets, and it's going to allow you to basically flip the coil, and then you'll just take the system, turn it upside down. So if you're doing a downflow application and you're calling your sales consultant, make sure that you let them know, hey, listen, this is downflow. I need that downflow conversion kit. Another great source of information, actually, I think, which probably should be one of your primary sources of information when it comes to the Samsung multi-position air handler or anything Samsung offers or sells. If you have a question regarding accessories or what's included, SamsungHVAC.com. That should be your go-to. It's very simple. You go SamsungHVAC.com, and when you pull up the website, you'll see a little magnifying glass on the top right-hand screen. You click the magnifying glass, and then type your model number in if you have it. If you don't have your model number, then you can click. I recommend going through technical documents and navigate your way over to the submittals. The submittals are going to have a wealth of information that you really don't have to make a phone call for. If you're wondering what the copper piping size is, it's going to have your copper piping size. It's going to have your max refrigerant piping. It's going to have how much feet of refrigerant is this pre-charged with. That information will be in the submittal. It's going to have your clearances. It's going to have your dimensions. It's going to give you a breakdown of how tall the system is, how wide it is. It's going to give you your AHRI number. So if you're pulling a permit, you can go to submittal. You can get your AHRI number from the submittal, and then go to AHRI and then pull that documentation for yourself. So it makes it a lot easier. Let me see what else information. It's going to give you all your optional equipment. Your first page is going to give you a breakdown of the copper sizes, how much is free. If you need additional Freon, how much additional Freon you'll need per foot is going to be in there. Your heating and cooling capacities, your just like how many different options as far as your controls that you can use for each system. It's going to give you, if you're not sure if this air handler will match up to a certain condenser, it'll give you a list of condensers that match, or air handlers that match up to that condenser. And then if you scroll down to the next page, you're going to have all your optional accessories. That's where you're going to find out if it's something that's included. For instance, if you go to optional accessories, because you're not, say you're not sure if the heat's included, you'll see that the heat kit that you would need is there. It's going to give you the part number. As I mentioned before, the downflow installation kit, that will be there as well. Your advanced wire controller, your Wi-Fi module or your Wi-Fi installation kit, even gives you a part number for a line set kit that Samsung offers, but we've been able to develop a great package for you guys, utilizing Cooper & Hunter's mini split installation kit, and then just basically adding the 16.2 stranded shielded wire. All your information as far as optional accessories will be on the second page, and then when we scroll down, that's where you're going to find your dimensions, how high, how wide. It'll give you the dimensions on the return and on the supply. So if you're prefabricating duct, if you're doing a remodel or a new home, and I think that's where these are really going to shine. If you're bidding a project for an addition that's using that regular has it like a root or ream or whatever already bid in there, you may want to see if they want to go with something like this, because in an addition you're running copper and everything anyways. So that would be one of the areas that I can see the multi-position air handler really shining. And it's just, I just see the wave of the future coming through the air conditioning industry. We're going up in SEER ratings. We're changing the Freon. All that old style contactor and PSE motors, they're all going to be fading away, unfortunately, for those that aren't staying up in education and continually educating themselves. they're going to find themselves at a disadvantage, 5 or 6 years down the road. So it is a wave of the future, if you could say. It's a long way from just going there and changing a contactor and run cap. So and those were simple, and I enjoy, and those are simple to fix and simple to teach people on. But this is something that's going to bring that high efficiency. You're already familiar. You guys should already be familiar with how mini split systems work. So there's not going to be much of a learning curve. If you've been installing a high wall system, there's not much difference here. It's going to operate the same. It's going to give the same error codes. We already know about the copper piping and the communication wire. And there's built-in surge protectors on these systems. So the mini split systems have a better record of failures, as far as like there tend to be less failures. The majority of calls that we get are going to be on the standard style AC systems. And even when I was in contracting, I think there's only one contractor, and it was just recently, that said he had, I guess it was a job that they had multiple failures. I forget what he was talking about. There was something, there must have been an issue with that job, because they were losing compressors left and right. But in my career as a contractor, about 26, 27 years, I've changed out 2 compressors on mini splits. So they tend to last for a long time. I have a mini split system on my parents' house that I wired into a light socket, and that thing's been running for like 17 years. So they definitely have a good reputation for longevity. So, and I see that being in the future. Yes.
Okay, we're at 8:35.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. I run my mouth too much. Okay, thank you. I talk too much. Okay, let me shut up and let me get into the breakdown of this. I am so sorry. All right. I got a big mouth. What can I say? Were there comments like, "Hey, this guy shut up already," and just start taking it apart?
Yep.
Good, perfect. All
we
right,
like it when they speak up.
Yeah, no, I've been doing so many of these talks. Like, I got so many things in my head that I want to share and make sure you guys hear that. It's good to tell me to shut up. So with this system, there's definitely plenty of screws. That's one thing I did notice when I first started working on the system. There's a lot of them. This system it's a galvanized cabinet that's powder coated. And if you ever get your hands on one of these systems, you'll be able to feel that the panels are pretty rigid. One thing I do want to point out is how thick the insulation is. It's not curved. That's my fisheye lens I have on my phone. But you see how thick this insulation is? Most insulation, you guys probably already know, usually tends to be a lot thinner. So I'm very hopeful that we're not going to have any sweating issues with these systems because of how thick the insulation is. You can just see how it puffs out. So that's one thing that's good about these. Here we go. You have your control board here. This is where you're going to be accessing and wiring in your overflow safety switches. There are LEDs on this board, so you'll be able to get error codes and be able to diagnose the system from here. Of course, I do recommend diagnosing the system from the advanced wire controller, because that's going to give you an error code. You're not going to have to count blinks or anything like that. You have your plug for your additional heat kit. The additional heat kit is going to install pretty much in the same position that the root system would install. You're going to have, there is a plug here you'll have to remove in order to allow this to swing out. But this will basically swing out, and then your heat kit is going to install right back here. And then that panel is going to come off, and then your heat kit is going to install right there. Of course, you can see that they really put a lot of thought into insulating this cabinet. So even this is insulated on the inside here. This is a standard 24 volt transformer. It's wired for 230, 240, or 240 volts. You do have the option for the 208 volts right here. But if you need to power your UV light, you can't power it from this. If you need to power any other 24 volt accessories, you can power from this as well. One thing I do note is you're not going to want to break red on this in order to wire a float switch. So if you're installing one of these, definitely do not break red on this to install a float switch. You're going to want to either tap into the board and activate that on the menu of the advanced controller. So that way, if you do get an overflow call, it's going to give you an error code that's an overflow safety switch trip. If you wire it in to this is just going to create all kinds of problems for you. So you definitely don't want to wire that on red. If there's a job and you need to buy, you don't have that plug or you don't utilize it, you can break the return air temperature sensor. That is an option for you guys. If you guys have done that already, then you already know. But if not, that is a workaround for installing a overflow safety switch. Now we go down to the fan motor. Fan motor is a basic X13 style fan motor, which is your constant torque. It's going to utilize you got your speeds here. It's going to utilize all those speeds, and it's going to control the speed as it communicates with the condenser outside. And it's going to work in conjunction with the compressor. Not necessarily, I don't mean like at the compressor speeds up, the fan speeds up, but that communication between the indoor unit and outdoor unit is going to determine the fan speed. So if it's moving slow, that may be how it's trying to pull. Maybe it's trying to pull more humidity out, or whatever the situation is. So, but the good thing about this is that if you run into later on down the road, hopefully you don't, but if you run into an issue where you have a failed fan motor, you can essentially use a rescue motor that would replace a standard X13 style motor, and you could troubleshoot it just like you would any X13 motor. You could check for your low line voltage, and you could check for your low voltage when you get a call for cool. So that makes life a little easier when it comes to finding replacement parts for this system. What we used to do is we used to keep a couple rescue motors on the truck. We would use them as loaners. So that could be something, if you're already doing that as a practice, then you'll be able to keep that. And if you have a failed fan motor, you can just put that in there, order the replacement, and then come back and change it out. That way you get your customer up and going. Everything's nice and tidy here. If you see, nice wire looms, they keep everything nice and tight. Everything's clean. That you have that foil cabinet, but like I said before, you could see it's just like bulging. Like they really use a nice thick insulation for this cabinet, and you could feel it when you move the system on this unit around and you pick it up. It definitely it feels very sturdy, very rigid, and I think I can see this being a huge benefit, especially those of you that may have installed one of the root systems or a train or whatever in a right hand flow application. We tend to have a lot of sweating, so I'm pretty confident that we're not going to have that issue with these. The way they insulate this cabinet is great. So now we're going to work our way down to the coil. As you can see, that's your copper fitting, your copper connections for the evaporator coil. And by all means, they are flared. So if you can just cut these ends off. If you're going to braze, you can just cut these ends off, and then you will be able to just go ahead and, this is 5/8 and 3/8, to be able to slide your copper in there. If you're going to utilize the zoom locks, you would have to cut, if you're going to go with the 5/8, then you're going to have to cut these bell ends off and then attach the zoom locks here and here. All right, and there we go. Now, that's your coil. As you can see, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of room in here. It's a 3-ton system, but there's a lot of room. If you're going to install your iWave, you do have a little more room here than you have in some of the other units that I've seen before. You could put your UV lights, plenty of room to put your UV lights. But another thing, as I mentioned before, if you notice, there are no TXVs in this. The expansion valve is outside at the condenser. There's plenty of room to clean out the front of the drain pan. And this is a copper tube and fin coil. It's not a microchannel. So that's make life a lot easier when you need to clean the system. You have 2 sensors on the evaporator, just like you would in a high wall mini split. You're gonna have your evap in and your evap out sensors. So that's gonna help the system communicate and communicate back and forth for the condenser to make sure that it cools the home properly. And then you have your return air temperature sensor. The return air temperature sensor is going to be the primary source of sensing the indoor temperature, unless you go into your advanced controller and you set it to re-sense at the advanced controller. So if you install one of these and you don't go into the settings and you don't activate that, it's going to sense here. That may be an issue if this is in a closet and the outside area is going to maybe much warmer. that would definitely be something that I would recommend if you're when you install that advanced wire controller, to go into the settings and either set the settings to have an average of the two sensors, or focus exclusively on that advanced wire controller. But for the most part, pretty simple. Like I said before, you have the zoom lock fittings. It's going to make life a lot easier when you do need to pull and clean this coil, but there's plenty of room. You got the horizontal drain pan here that obviously it can be flipped over and put on the right. You do not need a conversion kit to set this up in a right-hand flow. So there are no additional brackets. You're just going to need to pull this out, and you're going to, you can see you have, you're going to have your preset holes here to be able to transfer this over to the other side, and then you can set it in your right-hand application. Here are your control. This is your connections for your communication, your F1 and F2. The V1 and V2, that's going to be for 24-volt accessories, Samsung accessories. That'd be something that I'll go over when we do the deep dive, and what you'll be able to, how you'll be able to utilize the V1 and V2. And then your F3 and F4, that's where your advanced wire controller is going to go, and that's going to communicate to your advanced wire controller. If you have two systems and you want to operate them on one advanced wire controller, you can. You could take two. That's another benefit, or something that may be application based, or something you may want to utilize. If you have two of these systems in a single zone application, cooling maybe like an IT room, and you want both systems to come on together, you can daisy chain both of these systems off the F3 and F4, and control both systems, or three systems if you have three systems, off one wire controller. So that'd be a benefit, like in an IT room, if it's a long room and you have, and this not only applies to the multi-position air handler, but it also applies to the high walls. The high wall systems, you'll need additional accessories, but if you have the four-way cassettes, the multi-position air handler, the ducted systems, you can run multiple systems off one wired controller. So that's definitely something that I could see that I could have utilized in the past before. You get your schematic, basic information telling you your fan speeds. You will have to set there are fan speed settings. If you need to, you can change them depending on the static. I will tell you that this is the 3-ton system. I believe is rated up to 1 inch column, or one inch of static pressure. The 12, the 18, the 24, and the 30 are 0.8, I believe. And Michael, if he's on there, maybe he can double check me on that. That's important if you're going in a high static course. We want to see 0.5 static in any inverter system, on any system really. You really don't want to go above 0.5. Once you go above 0.5, and that's when you really start running into issues. Static pressure, if you're measuring static pressure on these, you want to measure in between the coil and the filter. You don't want to include the filter. That being said, you can put your probe in, take one of these screws out, and you can put your probe in there, get it in between the filter and the coil, and that'll allow you to get a proper reading. If you guys are measuring on this side of the filter, then it's definitely not where you want to be. As I said, I went out to a job not too long ago, and the guy gave me static pressure readings, and he was measuring before the filter, and it made a 1/2 inch of static difference, which is huge, almost a little more than doubling, a little less than doubling. For the most part, that's about it when it comes to this system. You do have an access port here if you do want to pressure test the coil, or you want to make sure the system has pressure before you start the system. You take this, or if you want any access port, if you need to put your gauges on, you do have another access port here. It does have a Schrader valve in there, so there is another port for you to access the system if you need to. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else to say, and that's kind of rare.
Well, we can ask everybody to enter their questions in the chat box, and we can read them off. Michael Glenn's been piping in here with your 100% heat on the 1 to 2 tons is 100% heat down to -4. 2.5 to 4 ton is 100% heat to 14 degrees. And I guess that's another thing we should mention is these do come in 1/2 ton sizes. So that's also nice about that air handler. And then he's also saying that we can access the submittal through the Samsung HVAC app. So if you guys have that app, you can download it on the iPhone store or the App Store and get that down there. And then whatever you said last, he said it's correct.
Oh, that was the static pressure ratings.
Awesome. So if any of you guys have questions, somebody just raised their hand and then unraised their hand. Okay, so write them in the chat box and I will read them out for Tim. If there's anything that you have questions on, we'll answer a couple questions and then we'll get to our trivia questions. No one has questions.
I did a lot of talking. Maybe they just want me to, get off already.
Okay, so Frentel Parker says, why did they go with that coil instead of the aluminum?
That's a great question. I haven't really got an answer for you on that yet. I know everybody's going aluminum, and Samsung and most of just about all the mini split the manufacturers out there that I've seen are still keeping that copper aluminum coil. I don't know. That's a good question. I am
all right,
surprised.
So Michael, we'll ask Michael Glenn to pipe in on that.
Okay.
John Damon is asking if Ruda has intentions of these mini condensing units. John, yes, it is on their plate to create. I just don't know when we'll see those. Ricky wants to know, is there going to be a link to rewatch? Yes, after the show, we are going to send you guys a follow-up email that'll have a link to the video. Kendrick is asking what kind of wire communication is used.
16.2 stranded shielded, just as the same as the high wall and other units that Samsung offers.
Yep, and we sell that at Tropic Supply, and that again helps make sure there's no communication errors. How would the heat kit be wired? Dave Abel wants to ask that. I think you showed that behind the control board, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. So basically, you have a plug right here. So you're gonna plug the heat kit right into there. You have your power. Actually, your heat kit's gonna plug in here for the control. When you get a heat kit, it's gonna come with a breaker, and you're gonna power that up separately. That would be a situation where if you're going back behind a standard HVAC changeout, then you would want to utilize that existing line voltage that was powering the air handler. But when you get the heat kit, it's going to come with a breaker that comes right there. And if you see there's a little cutout here already, you take these screws out, you now would power it. Then you would just, very similar to a standard heat kit, and then you just plug it into this board, and then I'll control it.
Todd Sutherland is asking, is the outdoor coil micro channel?
Yes, I believe so. I believe that the outdoor unit is a microchannel, but I'd have to see when that change took place. When I read the submittal on the condenser does say it's a microchannel coil, aluminum microchannel coil.
That's correct.
I haven't seen the newer ones. I know the older ones were still that copper, but I know on the submittal the new ones are going to be all that microchannel aluminum.
All of the CAC and FJM for the last few years have been microchannels. So.
Okay. So it's the single zone units that are still running the copper. Would that be correct? I guess the RAC, the residential, are still copper, and then the CAC, the light commercial, and FJMs will be microchannel.
Okay. Dave Abel, follow-up question on the heat kit. The high voltage, will it have dedicated wire? Use the old wire?
Yes, so you're gonna power the air handler off the condenser. That's gonna power up the board. It's gonna power up the evaporator fan motor and supply necessary power for that. And then you will have to run an additional line voltage for the heat kit. As I said before, we did check with local code. You shouldn't have to add an additional heat kit. Unlike standard heat pump systems where they go into that defrost mode and the system shuts down and a homeowner still needs emergency heat or auxiliary heat, you're not going to have this situation with this. So you shouldn't need to add an additional heat kit when it comes to inspections and everything. The system will heat, like as we mentioned before, 14 degrees for the larger and -4 degrees on the smaller sizes.
Tim, I think it's important to note that this is not an auxiliary heat kit. It's not an emergency heat kit. It's a supplemental heat kit. So it's only going to operate when or if the heat pump system couldn't keep up with the heat load in the house, or the cooling load in the house, however you want to look at it. So this can't be used as emergency heat when you wire that heat kit in. So in other words, if there's a failure in the outdoor condensing unit, you can't turn this heat on as emergency heat. It doesn't operate that way. It's a supplemental heat strip only used in the event the heat pump can't keep up with heating the house. So it's very rare that you're ever going to install a heat kit in this unit. In fact, Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't even think we're planning on carrying those heat strips. They would be a special order item.
Yeah, that's correct. We went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And for the reasons you just stated, we don't feel the need to carry them. You just won't need it.
Right. And you have 100% heating capacity down to 14 degrees or -4 degrees, depending on the size of the unit. I don't really see where you're gonna struggle. If the system is sized properly, you're not gonna have any problems.
John Damon asks, only one breaker if no heat strip, ?
Well, yes, you only need one breaker, and that'll be at the condenser. That's all you would need. You basically, if this is a new install, then you would only need to supply a breaker. Now you can put a disconnect, because of course code, you're still going to need that disconnect. You could still run that line voltage to a disconnect in the air handler closet and then to the condenser. But yes, you will only need one breaker, and that max amp information that you will also be in the submittals, whether you use the app or you go to samsunghvac.com.
Awesome. And then Kendrick asks, can we wire motorized damper for commercial application?
Yes, you can. And I will go over those settings and how you would wire that in when we do our deep dive in here. But yes, there is a function in the system to open and close a fresh air damper.
All right. So Kendrick, you need to make sure you register for the next class. All right. I think that's it for the questions. So if Nicole wants to go to the trivia, we can play trivia. And then after that, if there's any more questions, we can wrap up with questions.
Okay, so quiz question time. Make sure if you guys don't already have your chat open that you get it open. And we will go ahead and get started. Question 1, true or false? When installing a Samsung multi-position air handler in a downflow application, you will need a downflow conversion kit. Okay, question 2. When running copper line sets for the installation of a Samsung multi-position, which of the following statements is correct? A, follow the same guidelines as any typical HVAC split system. B, always use existing line sets to save on materials. C, both copper lines must be insulated individually. D, it is not necessary to insulate the copper line set. The Samsung multi-position air handler utilizes an electronic expansion valve, which is located where? A, in a branch box mounted in the attic. B, inside the multi-position air handler. C, inside the condenser. D, in both the air handler and condenser. Question number 4. True or false? Samsung multi-position air handler may be installed with the current Rude filter rack sold at Tropic Supply.
Awesome.
Awesome. And that's all for trivia.
All right. So if you guys have any other questions, now is the time. And we're going to be ending right on time, 8:59. We got one more minute.
And you guys, if you don't have my contact information, be sure to get it. If you have any questions, you guys know I'm always available for you. If you need job site visits, if you're doing a new startup and you want me to come out and just hang out with you guys or help you start it up, whatever it is, I'm here for you guys to support you in whatever you need.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I don't see any more questions. We'll see you. Make sure everybody gets registered for the next deep dive into the accessories that Tim will be doing, and we'll see you around next time.